Picture this. It's late 1970. Led Zeppelin are already the kings of rock. They've got fame, money, endless tours, and fans everywhere. But deep down, they're burned out and itching for something more. Something that isn't just louder, but deeper. So they hide away at Headley Grange, an old creepy stone mansion in the English countryside. Imagine cold rooms, strange echoes, and the kind of silence that makes your creativity start to buzz. Jimmy Page walks around with a little tape recorder chasing ideas. One night, he picks up his acoustic guitar and starts playing this soft flowing tune. It starts small, peaceful, almost like a whisper, but builds into something grand and emotional. Nearby, Robert Plant is scribbling in his notebook. Bits of Celtic stories, mythic stuff, lines inspired by Tolkien, and whatever spiritual thoughts are running through his head. Out of that mix of music and mood comes something special. The seed of what would become Stairway to Heaven. A song half mystical, half powerful. A song that people would one day see as almost sacred. Stairway to Heaven wasn't just written, it was built. Jimmy Page designed it like architecture. Each section carefully lifts you higher than the last, like climbing a staircase that never ends. It starts out gentle, acoustic guitars in a soft A minor tone, with recorders adding this medieval fairy tale vibe thanks to John Paul Jones. Then, slowly, instruments join in. The energy rises. The guitars get electric. By the time John Bonham's drums kick in near the end, it's like an explosion. The song finally opens up and takes flight. And here's what's wild. It's over 8 minutes long, and there's no chorus. Yet no one listening ever feels like something's missing. There's a lady shoe. It flows so naturally that you don't even notice the rules being broken. Page once said he just wanted a song that keeps climbing. And that's exactly what he made. A musical staircase people are still climbing 50 years later.
And when she gets there, she knows if the stars are all closed.
When it came time to record, Zeppelin didn't do things the normal way. They started at Basing Street Studios in London, then packed everything up and took it back to Headley Grange. They used the Rolling Stones mobile recording truck, which was basically a studio on wheels. Pretty high tech for the time. That old mansion gave the music this natural echo, like the walls were part of the sound. You can hear it in those haunting guitar tones. Robert Plant didn't even overthink his vocals. He made up a lot of the lines while singing, finishing the lyrics right there in one go. But soon, musicians started whispering. Something about that iconic opening guitar riff sounded familiar. There was an old instrumental track from 1968 called Taurus by a band named Spirit. And funny enough, Zeppelin and Spirit had played some of the same shows back in the day. So the question began to spread. Did Jimmy Page borrow the idea, or was it just one of those musical coincidences that happened by accident? Taurus was only about 2 minutes long, a soft, moody instrumental with a descending A minor pattern. But if you listen closely, yeah, it sounds a lot like the beginning of Stairway to Heaven. The notes kind of fall the same way, just slower and slightly rearranged. Jimmy Page always brushed it off. He said that chord pattern had been around forever, used in folk music, classical music, everywhere. To him, it was just a common musical shape, not stolen from anyone. But Randy California, the guy who wrote Taurus, saw it differently. Before he passed away in 1997, tragically saving his son from drowning, he mentioned in interviews that you can tell where Jimmy got his inspiration. For decades, it was just a quiet rumor passed around by musicians. Nobody went to court, nobody made a big deal, but eventually, that old rumor would come back, louder than ever. When Led Zeppelin 4 came out in November 1971, it was massive. But here's the twist. Stairway to Heaven wasn't even released as a single. Fans had to buy the whole album or wait for the radio. And they did. Radio stations were flooded with requests. People just couldn't get enough. By the mid-70s, it was the most requested song in the world. Kids everywhere tried to learn it on guitar, even if most gave up halfway through. To fans, it wasn't just a song, it felt like some kind of revelation. Critics argued about it endlessly. Some said it was genius, others called it overblown. But whenever Zeppelin played it live, all the doubt vanished. The second that first riff hit, the crowd went wild. People literally screamed the notes. Jimmy Page's double-neck guitar became a rock symbol, and Robert Plant's final line, "and she's buying a Stairway to Heaven," sent chills through every arena. Still, hiding behind all that glory was a tiny melody from another man, a little echo from Taurus, quietly climbing alongside Zeppelin's masterpiece, waiting for its moment in the spotlight.
She's buying a stairway to heaven.
By the time the early 70s rolled around, Led Zeppelin had already built a bit of a reputation, not just for being incredible musicians, but also for borrowing a little too freely from their influences. Songs like "Whole Lotta Love" leaned heavily on old Willie Dixon lyrics.
You got yarning.
The Lemon Song echoed Howlin' Wolf, and Bring It On Home opened with a Sonny Boy Williamson blues riff. Each one blurred the line between homage and theft. Jimmy Page defended it by saying Zeppelin were simply taking the old blues language and transforming it into something new, turning raw roots music into powerful modern art. But critics, especially blues purists, saw something else. Famous white rock stars making millions off the work of uncredited black musicians. So when people began whispering that Stairway to Heaven might have lifted from Taurus, it didn't come out of nowhere. It fit a pattern everyone already knew. Whether fair or not, the story made sense. Zeppelin had always danced dangerously close to the edge between influence and appropriation. And this time, the melody in question was too famous, too sacred, for that dance to go unnoticed.
Your head is humming out, it won't go in case you don't know.
For years, that rumor about Taurus was just something used record fans and rock nerds talked about quietly. Nobody in the mainstream really cared. It was one of those trivia facts people might mention, then shrug off. Then, out of nowhere in 2014, the whole thing came roaring back to life. Michael Skidmore, who represented the estate of the late Randy California, filed a lawsuit against Jimmy Page and Robert Plant in Los Angeles. The claim was simple but explosive. The opening of Stairway to Heaven was copied from Taurus. Suddenly, one of rock's oldest whispers had turned into a full-blown courtroom showdown. The world's biggest band was being asked one of the oldest questions in art. Where does inspiration stop and imitation begin? Experts, fans, and journalists dug in. Musicologists broke down both songs note by note, analyzing every chord, every transition. For many, it felt like deja vu, another legendary rock act accused of stealing from the past. But for Zeppelin, it felt like their history was being pulled back into the spotlight, decades after they thought it was settled.
Led Zeppelin is off the hook after a 6-day trial a Los Angeles jury decided this week.
Fast forward to June 2016. The moment finally came. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant walked into court. They weren't performing for screaming fans this time. They were testifying under oath. Page admitted he owned Spirit's first 2 albums, but said he didn't remember ever hearing Taurus. The plaintiffs brought in music experts who compared the 2 songs, pointing out that both used a similar descending A minor arpeggio and had nearly identical pacing. Zeppelin's defense fired back, saying that kind of chord pattern had existed since the Baroque era. Basically that nobody could own something so common. Here's the interesting part. The jury wasn't even allowed to hear the real recordings. Copyright law forced them to listen only to simplified versions of the sheet music. Imagine deciding a case about sound without actually hearing the sound. Still, after days of testimony and a few surreal moments, including Jimmy Page air guitaring to explain his process, the jury made their decision. Zeppelin won. No infringement. The melody, they said, was too common to own. And just like that, one of rock's most talked about rumors turned into one of its most debated verdicts. But as anyone who follows these stories knows, in law, even a verdict isn't always the end. In 2018, an appeals court decided to reopen the case, saying the first jury might not have been given proper instructions. For 2 more years, the ghost of the 70s hung over the band. Fans wondered if Stairway might finally fall from grace. Then, in March 2020, a larger panel of judges stepped in and reversed that reversal, upholding Zeppelin's victory once and for all. The decision didn't just protect one song, it reshaped how copyright law looks at music in the US. The court ruled that chord progressions and basic patterns, those building blocks of songs, can't be claimed as private property. Randy California's family lost the case, yes, but they earned something else: recognition. People who had never heard of Taurus started searching it out, streaming it, curious about the story behind it. Meanwhile, Stairway to Heaven climbed right back to its iconic throne. Now, not just legendary, but legally bulletproof. Its myth had been reforged in court. Even though Zeppelin came out of the courtroom clean, the song's reputation had taken on a strange life of its own. By the 1990s, Stairway to Heaven wasn't just a classic. It was everywhere. So much so that people started to groan when they heard that first guitar line. In guitar shops across the world, clerks got so tired of hearing beginners try to play it that they taped up signs saying, "No Stairway." The joke spread so far it even popped up in Wayne's World, becoming one of rock's most famous punchlines. Robert Plant started to feel distant from the song that had once defined him. He stopped performing it for years, saying it belonged to another part of his life, a younger, more mystical time.
Now it's Stairway to Heaven. Well, you will perform it. It's not your favorite thing to perform.
Well, it's not about it being my favorite or not. It's nothing to do with that, really. It's just that it belongs to a particular time. But they were coming out of the mind of a 23-year-old guy, you know, and it landed in the years and the era of 23-year-old guys.
Jimmy Page, though, never lost faith in it. He still called it a milestone of craft, a moment where music and magic truly met. Maybe that's the real irony. Stairway to Heaven was written to be a song about spiritual ascent, about transcendence. But over time, it became too human. Overplayed, overanalyzed, fought over, and joked about. A song meant to climb forever, weighed down by its own greatness. Just when it seemed like Stairway to Heaven couldn't get any bigger or any stranger, the late 1970s gave it a whole new kind of controversy. Evangelical groups started claiming that if you played the song backward, you could hear hidden satanic messages. The most quoted one? "Here's to my sweet Satan." It sounds wild now, but back then, it sparked a moral panic. Teens were scared, parents freaked out, and news specials warned of backward messages in rock music. Led Zeppelin denied it completely. Jimmy Page called the theory ridiculous backward phonetics, pointing out that if you play any words in reverse long enough, your brain starts to invent patterns. But the real damage wasn't about what the record actually said. It was about what it represented. A song that once seemed mystical and spiritual was now being accused of devil worship. It was almost poetic. Every generation projected its own fears and fantasies onto Stairway to Heaven. And in the end, Zeppelin learned that once a song leaves your hands, you can't control what people will hear in it. By 1980, the fairy tale was over. The band's drummer, John Bonham, died unexpectedly and Led Zeppelin fell apart. They didn't replace him. They didn't tour. They just stopped, ending one of rock's greatest dynasties overnight. That moment froze Stairway to Heaven in time. It wasn't just a hit anymore. It became a memorial. The song stood as both their masterpiece and their monument. For Jimmy Page, it was everything. His crown, but also his chain. No matter where he went, no matter what he played, people just wanted that riff. Robert Plant, trying to move forward, grew distant from it. He once joked that it had turned into a wedding song for everyone who never actually listened to the lyrics. What was written as a climb toward transcendence had become a cage. They built a ladder to heaven and found themselves stuck at the top. Even as Zeppelin faded, Stairway refused to die. Through the 80s and 90s, guitar teachers around the world kept starting lessons with the same 8 notes.
And it's whispered that soon, if we all call a tune.
Metal bands, ballads, stadium anthems, they all pulled a little something from its DNA.
John Bonham, Jason Bonham.
Then came Wayne's World in 1991. When the movie joked about the no stairway sign, younger audiences laughed. But most didn't realize it came from real life. Guitar shops everywhere truly had those signs taped up because everyone, literally everyone, kept trying to play it. The song had become rock's version of Happy Birthday. Everybody knew it. Everybody rolled their eyes at it, but deep down, nobody could resist it. And even with the parody, the lawsuits, and the endless repetition, the magic never really vanished. Play it on vinyl, on some old stereo late at night, and suddenly it hits all over again. Overexposure didn't kill it, it just made the rediscovery that much sweeter. Half a century later, Stairway to Heaven still makes more money than almost any other rock song in history. Over $500 million in royalties from radio and publishing. But the people who created it don't talk about it with much warmth anymore. Robert Plant calls it a nice song that belongs to another man. Jimmy Page talks about it like an architect describing a cathedral. Technically beautiful, yes, but almost detached from emotion. The truth is, the song's story became bigger than the song itself. The moral panics, the plagiarism lawsuit, the endless replaying, it all fused into legend. What started as a quiet search for spiritual peace became one of the most analyzed, imitated, and argued over songs in rock history. In the end, the Stairway didn't lead to heaven, it led to permanence. A legacy carved in stone, unbreakable, unstoppable, and maybe even a little haunting. Even now, decades later, new musicians still can't resist testing those same opening notes. Some do it out of love, trying to capture that old spark. Others do it just to feel rebellious, like sneaking into sacred territory. Walk into a guitar shop today, and you'll still see the no stairway sign hanging proudly. Not as a joke anymore, but as a little nod of respect. The lawsuit is over, but the debate lives on. Was it inspiration or imitation? Genius or borrowing? Maybe both. Because what remains isn't a verdict or a headline. It's a sound that refuses to fade. Back in 1971, Led Zeppelin reached for something eternal. 50 years later, they found it. But not the way they expected. Somewhere in the space between spirituality and superstition, between creation and controversy, that sound still lives. And every time a beginner picks up a guitar, carefully plays those first few notes, and climbs that invisible staircase, the journey starts all over again. So, what do you think about this magical, mysterious song? Do you remember the first time you heard Stairway to Heaven? Maybe it was on an old radio, maybe you found it on a dusty vinyl, or maybe it was the first thing you tried to play on guitar. Whatever your story is, drop it in the comments. I'd love to read your memories. If you enjoyed this deep dive into rock history, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for climbing this stairway with me. I'll see you in the next video.
To heaven.